Here we are. Chapter 11. Dovin Bon. Dovin Bon was in hiding, hurt, blinded by Lazov's throwing knives. Bon had instinctively planeswalked away from Ravnica to his old boarded-up domicile on Kaladesh. It was, he had to admit, a move driven by desperation, if not flat-out panic. But almost immediately, his fearsome intellect had kicked in. He knew Lazov, Chandra Nalaar, Sahili Rai, and Lavinia had seen him planeswalk away, and they had seen his condition at the time, which was to say, they had seen a rare moment of unpreparedness in him. They'd soon guess at the truth, calculate that he would planeswalk home. Moreover, Bon knew he was not safe on Kaladesh. It seemed insane that the Kaladeshi weren't grateful for his efforts on their behalf. And yet, he would not be a fool who denied the obvious truth. He was unwelcome on his own home world. And if that weren't enough of a problem, there existed, with the immortal sun no longer under his or one of his surrogates' control, a combined 11% probability that Nicol Bolas might have failed, might have fallen, and if the dragon fell, then Nalaar, Rai, and Beleren might soon chase Bon here to Kaladesh, to this very room. Dovin Bon had made this stop to regain his wits and to take a breath, but he would not risk stopping long. Chapter 12. Rat. Rat didn't stay long. Though Madame Blaze still couldn't see Rat, the servitor had assigned her new, young, invisible mistress an extremely luxurious bedchamber. Rat took a moment or two to explore the amenities she would not, in fact, be enjoying. But within minutes, she had entered the darkened corridor and was kneeling before Teo's door to pick the lock to his room. He entered quietly. He was out like a light, snoring softly. Adorable. Adorable. Rat crawled onto the bed beside him. He was dead to the world, and had no idea she was there. For some reason, he found this strangely reassuring. Rat was so accustomed to her curse, it rarely bothered her, but tonight had been different. Frankly, it had been brutal. Brutal because she had been noticed. Now it was a relief to be once again unobserved. Without waking him, Rat kissed Teo goodbye on the cheek and departed first his room, then the dark corridor, and ultimately the entire cathedral opulent. In no time, he was on Tin Street, where multiple celebrations of the day's victory were in full swing. Folks toasted the dead, the heroes, each other. The nervous, relieved laughter of survivors filled the air as dozens of inebriated Ravnicans passed her by without a second glance, or a first glance for that matter. Rat found a shadowed doorway, slid to the filthy ground in her newly cleaned clothes, and had herself a good cry. Chapter 13. Chandra Nalaar. Chandra was trying to sleep, and failing miserably. She was lying in her mother's bedroom, in her mother's bed, as her mother, Pia Nalaar, slept soundlessly beside her. It wasn't like she wasn't tired, exhausted even. They were all exhausted. There probably wasn't a soul on Ravnica that wasn't exhausted after all they'd been through today. But sleep simply wasn't coming. Her brain just wouldn't turn off. Giving up, Chandra rose and dressed as quietly as she could manage. Her mother stirred, but didn't wake. Chandra watched her breathe for a time, then snuck out, feeling vaguely guilty about it, as if she were a teenager breaking curfew. Moving down the short corridor, Chandra paused outside her own bedroom. She called it her bedroom, and certainly it was the room Pia had assigned as hers. But the pyromancer could probably count on both hands the number of times he'd actually slept there. This wasn't really her room. This wasn't really her home. Not yet, anyway. Maybe not ever. Not that there was somewhere else she could or did consider home. There was Carol Keep, but she dreaded the thought of returning to her role and responsibilities as its abbot. He'd had a bedchamber in the embassy of the Guild Pack for a while. Bolus and Tezzeret's planar bridge had ripped the building apart, and honestly, it had been so long since she had spent any significant time there. She hadn't even bothered to look through the wreckage to see if she could find anything she might want to salvage. Pushing the door open just an inch, Chandra peeked into the chamber. Nisa and Jaya were both asleep in Chandra's bed. Chandra watched Nisa slumber and remembered, after the battle, telling Nisa she loved her, and Nisa saying she loved Chandra as well. It hadn't meant what she had once hoped it would mean. Not to either of them. It couldn't anymore. They had been mourning Gideon, and Nisa had wiped Chandra's tears away. Chandra wanted to cry now, but she was drained, numb. She didn't like feeling numb in Nisa's presence. She nudged the door closed again, and moved on. She made her way through the living room where Teferi slept on the couch beside a standing dormant Karn, which frankly didn't look all that different from a standing alert Karn. Or perhaps he really was alert. She seemed to recall someone, Jaya maybe, telling her that Karn never slept. Perhaps he was merely pretending to be dormant in order to make his organic friends more comfortable. If so, she'd let him pretend. Nearly stepped on Ajani, who, for lack of another available bed, was curled up on the floor in the corner like the world's largest domesticated cat. It was a full house, despite the fact that Sahili Rai had taken Huatli home with her. Chandra felt stifled among all these people, though every single one was her friend. She had to get outside and feel the cool night air on her face. She opened the front door as quietly as she could manage, and departed. But there was no cool night air. It was a hot, sultry evening in the city of Girapur. Chandra had all this pent-up energy she needed to vent, all this fire she needed to channel somehow. Her face set. He headed for Dovin Bond's home. When he had planeswalked away from Ravnica, Bond had been hurt, blinded, in trouble, off his game for maybe the first time ever. Chandra figured Bond would have, for once, followed his instincts and gone home. The odds of him still being there all these hours later were pretty slim, but if there was even a chance Chandra might get to bring him to justice for all the damage Bond had done on Kaladesh and Ravnica, he had to try. In any case, it was better than staring at the ceiling in her mother's bed. When she arrived at Bond's home, with the windows boarded up and the boards completely covered with the kind of graffiti that would have annoyed Dovin Bond to no end, Sahili Rai and Huatli were already there. "Couldn't sleep," Chandra said. "Neither could we," Sahili replied, nodding. "Though Bond might have come back here," Chandra said. "Had the same thought," Sahili said, still nodding. "Probably not there anymore." "Probably not. You want to break in? Or should I?" "I'll do it," Huatli said, taking a step back and immediately kicking the door open. She entered first, blade drawn. Sahili followed, releasing one of her little golden filigree mechanical hummingbirds into the air. Chandra was right behind them both, with a ball of fire hovering half an inch above the palm of her right hand. She levitated and expanded the flame ball so that it lit the room. The hummingbird zipped around everywhere, through every door, in and out, until finally it came back, landed on Sahili's shoulder, and shook its tiny head at its mistress. "He's not here," Sahili stated. "Probably hasn't been here in the 4 months since he fled Kaladesh," Chandra said grumpily. Sahili slid an index finger over the surface of a cabinet and examined it. "Then why is there no dust?" This perplexed Chandra for a moment, and then her jaw dropped. She said, "You don't think that all this time, while he was infiltrating Azorius, building all those thopters, and taking over the guild to serve Bolus, you don't think he was planeswalking back here every week or so to clean?" Sahili and Chandra's eyes met. Then in unison they nodded and said ruefully, "Of course he was." For some reason, this conclusion drove Chandra crazy. The ball of fire grew perceptibly larger. Watley said, "Over here." She had moved across the room to the kitchen. They joined her. She pointed at the counter and said, "He's been cleaning here too. And recently. You can smell it, but I suppose being blind made it slightly more difficult. He missed the spot." They leaned down to look. There was a dark spot on the counter. "Blood," Watley stated firmly. "Blood recently shed. He may be gone now, but he was here today. Tried to cover his tracks, so we wouldn't know, or at least couldn't confirm. He's been on Kaladesh." She sniffed the air and moved up. She found another drop of blood on the floor, and another on the windowsill. "He went out this window," Sahili said. He had to know he was no more welcome on Kaladesh than he would be on Ravnica. Instinct might have brought him home, but his intellect would have told him he couldn't stay." Chandra whispered, "But he climbed out, or walked away, as opposed to walking away, if you get my drift." They clearly did. Watley opened the window and exited. Sahili and Chandra followed. Watley was a decent tracker and found a drop of blood here and a drop of blood there, but within 100 yards, he'd lost Ban's trail completely. He muttered something about needing a dinosaur to track him any further at night. Sahili apologized for the lack of the breed on Kaladesh. Watley heaved a long sigh. "We'll not find him now. It's just been too long." Chandra said, "But we know he was here within the last few hours. And still, that's too long for us to draw any sound conclusions. It's possible Ban had gone into hiding somewhere on Kaladesh, and it's equally possible he already planeswalked away to planes unknown. Until someone we trust runs into him or hears word of him, I don't think we can know." A frustrated Chandra clenched her fist and extinguished her fireball quite suddenly, leaving the three women in darkness. It was either do that, or let it expand to burn the whole city to the ground. Peering through the night, Sahili said, "Well, it was worth a try." "You think you could sleep now?" Watley asked, surprising a yawn. "Yes, maybe," Sahili said as she lifted the hummingbird off her shoulder, put it away. Chandra said goodnight to them both, walked off, heading back, for lack of a better option, to her mother's home. Chapter 14. Teo Virata. "I thought I told you to lock your door." "What door?" Teo asked blearily. "There's no door." "Teo, wake up!" The abbot was shaking him out of a very sound sleep. Morning sun was shining in through the window. The abbot shook him again. He looked up. "Not the abbot," Definitely not the abbot. It took Teo a few seconds to even recognize Kaya, to even remember where he was, what world he was on. But it all began to come back to him through the haze of his still tired brain. Why didn't you lock the door? I did, he muttered low. Then clearing his throat, he repeated, I did. I know I did. Well, I found it open. And Rat's door was unlocked too. She's gone. Wait, what? Rat is gone. Instantly, Teo was fully alert. He sat up in the bed and asked, almost demanded, Where did she go? I don't know, but I'm already late for the meeting at the Senate House, so you need to find her. He nodded. Nothing happened for a beat, until an exasperated Kaya said, Teo, get a move on. I'm worried about her. She needs you. She needs us. Now, without a doubt, her tone reminded him of Abbot Barres. He scrambled out of bed and immediately began donning his outer garments, but he was also shaking his head. Kaya, you know why she left. She left because we're leaving. I'm well aware of that. Nevertheless, I want you to find her and bring her back. So that we get to say goodbye? So that maybe none of us have to. Chapter 15. Jace Beleren. As planned, the planeswalkers gathered atop the citadel of Bolas, where Gideon Jura had died. As Jace climbed the steps of the pyramid with Vraska by his side, he spotted Kiora and Tamio, and Samet, Sahili Rai, and Huatli. The angel Aurelia was there too, though she wasn't a planeswalker, couldn't possibly join them on their journey. She held the leaf-wrapped breastplate of their fallen friend. Vraska had come to see Jace off, but he had already told him she wasn't going with him to Theros, and now she explained it to the others. I'm sorry, but I barely knew the man. And I have Golgari business to attend to. He glanced then at Aurelia, who nodded subtly, but not subtly enough for Jace to miss it. He made a conscious choice not to ask what Golgari business Queen Vraska had with the Boros Guildmaster. Instead, he reiterated to his new love that he would return to Ravnica and be back with her soon. Kiora also offered her condolences, but explained that she too would not be going with them. It seemed she was persona non grata on Theros. Ajani can explain it to you, she said, although maybe today is not the day to bring it up. Where will you go? Tamio asked. Home. To Zendikar. But first, I want to say, it's been... That is... She trailed off, looking inward. She glanced up at the others, shook her head rather hopelessly, and Plains walked away, vanishing in a fine mist. Almost immediately, and practically simultaneously, Chandra, Nisa, Teferi, Karn, Ajani, and Jaya planeswalked in from Kaladesh. Jace looked around, shrugged, and said, I figure that's pretty much everyone. Aurelia said, I wish I could go with you. I would have liked to seen the world that forged Gideon Jura. Jace knew she had loved Gideon as much as any of them, and watched as the tears of the angel fell upon the leaves that enfolded Gideon's armor. Jaya said, I'm going to beg off too. Ajani said, What? And Jace said, Really? A stunned Chandra just stared and whispered, Jaya? I'm sorry, Chandra, but when you've been alive for as many centuries as I have, well, sometimes you simply cannot face one more funeral for a friend. The fairy eyed her a bit suspiciously, but Chandra nodded. She seemed to accept the explanation, though she still seemed disappointed in her mentor. I guess the rest of us can go, They said. He kissed Vraska one more time and whispered, I'll be back soon. And then Vryn. And then Vryn, she whispered back. And with that, Jace, Chandra, Nisa, Karn, Samut, Teferi, Ajani, Tamio, Sahili, and Huatli departed Ravnica for Theros, leaving Vraska, Aurelia, and Jaya behind. Chapter 16. Teysa Karlov. Teysa Karlov, scion, and now matriarch of the most prominent family in the Orzhov Syndicate, was in her chambers. Well, of course I'm in my chambers. I've been confined to these same 5 rooms for the equivalent of an eternity. She was having a pleasant little chat with her executive assistant, her former executive assistant, Tomik Vrana. She was saying, Tomik, please, I know all about the assigned contracts. Your man Zarek is to hunt Tezzeret, the Gorgon sent after Baan, and Arkaya has been hired to kill Ves. He's being sent off plane to kill Ves. Tomik stuttered out a response. I wasn't aware you were so well informed. Because you choose not to inform me, he sighed. My friend, and I like to think we are still friends. I have multiple sources of information, and never has survived this long without such sources. No, I suppose not. In any case, I'm sure you can see the opportunity Kaya's assignment presents to us. Tomik scowled, but said nothing. The perfect opportunity. Still no response seemed forthcoming. Tomik, dear, it's the perfect opportunity to take the Orzhov away from its decidedly reluctant guildmaster. This isn't another coup. It's what Kaya wants, after all. No, mistress? He stopped and corrected himself. Milady, I will not condone taking advantage of this situation to remove Mistress Kaya from her position. She doesn't need to be removed if what? If she dies by trying to leave Ravnica while all those debtors' contracts are still in force? I won't allow that to happen either, nor will anyone be tearing those contracts away from her magically. We both know that could kill her too, and neither of us will do anything that could harm our lawful guildmaster. So now you see her as your one true lawful guildmaster. I remember when you saw me in that role. I remember that too, Milady Karlov. But things have changed. Yes, apparently they have. She paused before saying, Your lack of vision disappoints me, Vrona. You have left me quite cross. I'm sorry about that, truly. But as you probably know, my time is short this morning. I must go. He rose nervously and made his way to the door. He glanced back once and looked like he wanted to say something. He shook the thought off and exited, shutting the door behind him. Almost immediately, Azov seemed to melt out of the shadows behind her. She could feel his presence there without turning to look. He said simply, You see now. He nodded and said, Can be then.